Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we'll explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. Emily, it is so cool to have you here. We were talking about this for quite some time, and I'm not going to say I did a little arm twisting, but I did a little arm twisting, didn't I? And you're here.
Happy to be here.
You can challenge or refute that assertion if you choose to. So excited to have you here. And we've known each other for a little bit of time now, since we both went through the same coaching program together. And let's just get in here. Let's have you introduce yourself. Emily, tell us who you are and how would you like to be known?
Well, thanks, Paul. Hey, everybody. Well, I'm Emily, and I am a lover of laughter. So you'll probably hear that throughout this episode. I am a lover of fun. I love connecting with people. So I guess you can call me a connector. I am a career and a life empowerment coach, owner of Incredibly Emily Coaching. I am a wife. I am a dog mom, maybe more importantly. And I'm an HR professional, a player. I consider myself an athlete. I'm a player of floor hockey and beach volleyball. And I am a better listener than sharer, which you may see firsthand today as we progress through this thing.
Okay. Well, I mean, a couple of things. Let me reflect that back. First of all, the laughter, the humor piece is one of my favorite things about you, and fond memories that may come up or may not come up from our experience in TCE and the snort laughter. And yes, you are a great listener. It's one of your strengths as I've experienced you. And I am going to invite and encourage you to lean into your storytelling today, because that's obviously why you're here.
Thank you. Leaning in.
Yeah. And I'm excited to hear what you have to share, because we haven't talked about what you're going to be sharing. So I get to be front row and first person to hear your story. What would be your intention for yourself today, Emily?
Yeah. So my intention is to share my voice, and that may resonate more as we progress through this story of mine. My intention is to be fully present in this experience, to be vulnerable, try not to shed tears, and inspire someone to hear and explore something within themselves because of potentially something that they hear today.
I'm curious. I don't always press in on people's intentions, but I'm curious, what made you say be vulnerable? What's the significance of that word to you and your intention?
Yeah, well, thanks. So usually in my experience, vulnerability tends to lead to crying and tears with me. I'm a pretty emotional person. So trying not to be, just being open to the experience, and whatever comes will come.
Yeah, well, and I again invite you to let your story tell itself and be however you are, however you show up. That's what I see as the real value in the storytelling is, I've talked to some people and some folks who have shared, oh, well, how do I rehearse and prepare? And I'm like, the stories just have so much more value when they just come out naturally. And it's the how we really feel that really connects with people, in my opinion. And of course, this is another person who's highly sensitive and emotional and really, as I like to say, in touch with the full depth of the emotions that humans can experience. And that's how I would also characterize you, as not just emotional, but truly deep in those feelings. So
I appreciate that.
So my intention for today is, as always, to be able to create a space for some storytelling and some authenticity, and also that hopefully someone out there, or several someones or many someones, hear something in your story that resonates with them and makes them feel a little bit more connected, a little bit more empowered, a little bit less alone, and perhaps inspires somebody to, look at themselves a little differently or maybe take action on something that they've been sitting on. So
Love that. I'm all about the empowerment.
absolutely. Well, as always, we will frame our conversation with the same 5 questions, and then obviously we'll dig in a little deeper and kind of just go where the conversation takes us. But let's start with the first question. Let's kind of kick it off. Emily, where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life?
A comma I'm currently sitting on, and that I've been sitting on for a while, like long time. I've probably been looking over the ledge of the comma, like dipping my toe out, kind of feeling the breeze, and then getting scared and coming back to a solid footing on the comma. So this comma is comparing myself to other people and being afraid or worrying about how people will perceive me or what they think of me. And I mean, this has come up in several different aspects of my life. This came up in evaluating my career and what was important to me, what I was going for. Like, I see people in my network with these job titles that sound important, and they meant, I'm air quoting, successful to me, right? Like in my head. And what then translated to what normally that translated to was they're smarter than me, they work harder than me, they make more money than me, like more successful. They're doing more in their lives than me, more, like other people are better. So for a long time, up to the last year or two, I've been very motivated in my, 9-to-5 career by job title because of what that might mean for me and how others perceive me. And as an HR professional, I'm a human resources professional. It's comfortable. It's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. And HR is by no means a showy job, right? Like, it's very much behind the scenes, and it hasn't really opened doors to allow me to connect deeply or form any type of relationship with fellow employees. Because who wants to be friends with their HR rep? So, and my top value in life is connection. So anyway, that's a little bit about my career. I mean, in addition to that, there was a point in my life in my 20s and early 30s where I look around, and in my mind, I'm air quoting, I'm doing a lot of air quoting here, but like everybody else has passions and things they really love doing.
Yeah.
And I was over here feeling like I have nothing, and like having a really difficult time identifying that. You mentioned earlier that we went through the TCE, the coaching program together. And so now I have more clarity around what my gifts are, what my values are, my life purpose, what that is. So I've done a lot of work in that area over the last 2 years. But that's another example of this comparison thing, right? Like seeing what other people do and it having this effect on me or kind of this power over me. So then, in addition to being employed full-time in human resources, I also have a coaching business. And so now, as a sole proprietor and business owner, I am choosing, I want to say having, but I am choosing to put myself out there, getting comfortable, getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable and trying hard things. And this feels really scary, if I'm being completely honest, vulnerable. And what scares me tremendously is I'm afraid of putting myself out there and failing, and people seeing me as a complete idiot. Like having people make fun of me behind my back, joke about me, whatever it might be. I don't want people talking about me for the wrong reasons. I'm happy to have people talk about me for awesome reasons, but not the other way around. Like, I recognize I'm not going to hear them talking about me, but it's a fear like that it's hard to get past of this what if.
Well, let me reflect back some of what you've shared, because there's a lot of really, powerful things packed in here. And then obviously, we'll unpack it as the story unfolds. But, I hear you really talking about this role that comparison plays in your life and definitions of success, like comparing yourself to others based on how much more or less successful they are to you, how much more or less successful you are to them. And that you also said there was something about that kind of measuring stick that had to do with passions and people's passions, and one of your own passions being connection. I'm just kind of reflecting. And that when you compare, I'm curious, and we'll get there, like that there's the comparison, and then there's this fear of failing and people having negative things to say about you.
Yeah, it is. There does seem to be kind of two components to this. It is that comparison to other people. They feel related to me, but there's that comparison, and then like what will people say? How will people perceive me? Very much like that's been kind of a driving thing.
Yeah. And then you thought you were going to get away with it, but I'm coming back to it. You said, as a coach, I'm choosing to, and you said, I want to say I'm having to, but I'm choosing to. What was happening there? What did you mean there? What's the significance of it?
Well, so I know that I want to be a business owner. I mean, I am a business owner and I want to be off on my own doing my thing in the next couple of years. Gosh, I wish I could just like puff the magic dragon, like snap my fingers and that happen overnight. It's the hard work that is behind building a business that feels very much like, oh, these are things that I have to do.
Mm.
You know, in coaching, we talk a lot about like the reframing and the I'm choosing to do this because it is something that I want. But there are certainly things within building a business that I don't necessarily want to do.
Well, and it also seems like, one of the things that it's easy for all of us as human beings to get caught up in is this feels like I have to, this feels like I have to. Well, no, there's the element of you get to, or you choose to. And, we all have accountability to the choices we make too. So sometimes we make a choice that represents the thing that we want. And with that choice comes some things that we have to do. So it can be right? For us feelers, that's not always how it comes across. It's a have to no matter what. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. What is this creating for you? This comma that you're sitting on, you said you're kind of, you're on the edge of it. You're sticking your toes out. You're feeling the breeze. What is this creating for you? This comparison, this kind of fear of failing?
I see it impacting my life in several different ways. I mean, generally speaking, it has slowed me down in getting things done. And also it stopped me from doing things. Like, for example, putting myself out there on social media, sharing my vulnerability, sharing my thoughts about things. I often stop and think to myself, like, oh, I don't know what to say that people would find interesting, right? Like I second guess my voice. And I'll talk about two different voices today. Like there's this critical voice that's really mean internally to myself. And then there's this, like, I don't know, call it my positive voice. There's this positive voice where I'm really trying to work on finding my voice and like sharing my voice. So I often stop and think like, I have something to say, but I second guess how it will be perceived, or will I sound like a total idiot? Like these are the things with the critical voice, that the judgments that start popping in. But I have the desire. I want that voice that says like, you're not interesting enough, or, oh, that's going to sound stupid it seeps in. It seeps in a lot. And it stopped me in my tracks before. And it continues to stop me in my tracks.
And it seems like, as you describe this voice, this negative voice, or the sabotaging voice, as we've learned to call it in our training, this voice has 1,000 different labels out there in all the cultures around the world, right? But it seems like it's representing others in this comparison conversation, right? Because you said that's telling me that I'm not this enough or that enough, and it seems like that's the one that keeps you attached to seeing and focusing on other people.
It's interesting, as you were saying, that that critical voice feels very true. So it is hard to differentiate it or like distinguish it, because it feels like the truth. And it's been there. I've listened to it for so long. So it is an ingrained piece of me. It is, but as you were saying that, like it does seem like where it's getting its substance, or what it's, I don't know, the name calling or whatever it's calling, it seems to be comparing to how I see other people. That is interesting. It's like it's kind of pulling from other people, but it's internal too, right? So that's what I'm just kind of picturing. It's interesting.
Well, let's go there for a second. How do you see other people? Because that's already in the story. This is other people, their success, their passions, what they're doing, all that plays a big role in your life, or at least in your mind, right? With what this voice is saying to you. How do you see other people? What significance do you place on other people?
I think what sticks out and kind of drives that critical voice is the things that I perceive as successful. I mean, it really all kind of seems to come back to success. And I guess what my definition of success is, I don't know if I really have clarity around that. Obviously, somewhere internally I do, because it notices it in other people. But it's almost like personality traits or qualities or tangible things that I want to emulate, or things that I want to emulate or things that I want to have.
It's interesting. Something came up for me, and that's what I love about doing this. You and I are both coaches, and yet this isn't a coaching session, so we can play with this a little bit. What came up for me, and I'm going to share with you, is when you said this definition of success. I'm glad you brought it back to that, because that was one of the most important things, or one of the important things that you shared at the beginning. You said, deep down, I must have some clarity on what success looks like. And I'm wondering if, just really my own kind of take, if maybe it's not clear, because if it was clear, you would be able to recognize it in yourself more quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. But that last thing that you said, that's why coaching is so valuable, or just having somebody to point things out, because I find it very hard to acknowledge myself for things, because there are things that I am doing scary things. And, while I don't have a booming business at this point.
And if I may, which I will, right? I don't have a booming business right now. What's the significance of the word booming?
6 figures, a clear pipeline of clients, just really having my stuff together. Yeah, that would be the booming business. And I want it, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, and I interjected. So in all fairness, right? I interjected, right? Because I said, you were describing, I want to have a booming business, because we were talking about, are you clear on your definition of success?
Yeah, thank you. I have a hard time acknowledging myself for things that I have done, right? And so through working with a coach and just having supportive people in my corner and pointing out when I verbalize things that are the critical voice internally, but I'm saying those things out loud too. People can point it out to me and say, is that true? Because you did this other thing the other day, and holy cat, just pointing those things out, because I've had quite a few successes in my life. But even saying that, I'll second guess, how does that come across? Or, oh, that one doesn't really count. That one wasn't really that great enough, right? So there's always this thing of qualifying, or is it good enough?
Yeah, it sounds like this inner voice, really has a hold, right? Because you're talking about comparing yourself to others by definition of success or measure of success, and then what others think. And you said, what this is creating for me is that it's sort of, this is my word, but sort of creating a little bit of paralysis, or it has created paralysis at times, and potentially holding you back. And you've got these ideas and these visions of what success looks like for you, though, and examples and evidence of where you already have been successful.
Yeah, if I really take a moment to sit in that and find them, yes, but on an ongoing basis and more consistently, it's way more easier. It seems to be my default to the not good enough, not there, or other people are doing it better.
So tell us, because I believe this is very common. So many of us and so many people who might be listening to your story right now will be able to relate to this. What else is that creating for you? Let's just dig into it a little bit deeper. You said sometimes it holds me back, or what have you. But if you're, even just now, you said the voice was stepping in and causing you to clarify and second guess some of your own acknowledgments. Tell us a little bit more, let people know what it's like in Emily's life to deal with that voice.
Well, I see it at work in terms of holding myself back and putting myself out there. Even at work, there will be opportunities now to step in more of a strategic role and get out in front of leadership. And that scares the bejesus out of me, because it's again, afraid of how I will be perceived. But also I look at colleagues And they seem to have a very professional demeanor and like choose their words and like they come across very polished. And I don't see myself that way, which is interesting because I feel like every time I say that, somebody will point out and be like, I see you are very professional. I mean, that's another example. Just I get anxious, and I also find that I have to feel a little bit more comfortable, come to something very prepared. Like I will overthink to all angles and like make sure that I've crossed my T's and dotted my I's. Like even in with this, I've got my notes so I know something. So I'm not like a complete and utter babbling idiot. I feel like you can see it's just like it's totally there.
Well, can I add something in here that's, you tell me if this is off base at all, because I might be making this up. But there was a couple of things you said, and even just recently, it sounds like you have a belief that anyone that you meet who is successful has got it figured out and that they're all prepared and they've got it buttoned up.
That's not completely off base. There is that belief. It's either that or it just comes like, holy cow, how lucky are they? Because it comes so naturally for them. Like, yeah. So in some sense, they've got it all figured out, whatever that looks like behind the scenes.
And they have something you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels that way.
So that's interesting. What do you think? Right? I mean, no, because I learned from every one of my guests, I learned too. So now I'm curious, right? Like, ooh, where can this go for my own benefit as well? What do you think? Let's stay with this for a minute. May we? I should ask you for your permission. May we?
Sure.
What do you think is the thing they have that you don't? Let's just stay in that vein for a second.
Like what I keep going back to is that they've got it figured out. Like they've got the magic key, or
it's interesting.
They know what it takes.
Yeah, like it's interesting, right? Because, and we're not fishing. I just, I want to acknowledge for anybody who's listening here, like there's not some magic answer we're fishing for here. We're truly just exploring this. But what you just said, at first you're like, oh, maybe they're a little smarter than me, but that didn't quite feel right to you. But they have something you don't. That's what it feels like. Knowledge or some inside path, or you even use the word some key.
I don't know what the magic key is. It could, like per situation, the key could be something different, because there's not only one place that I guess in terms of success, right? Like, so the key to success. I don't know. I think I see different things in different people. There are a couple of different, personality traits, or I think it's different. I think it kind of is different depending on, there's probably a list of things that I feel like I don't necessarily have that other people do.
And it seems that's the package that comes with comparison, right? Is this assumption that others have something that we don't, that they're somehow more prepared, or there's
better communication.
Yeah. It's like the comparison doesn't usually come up with as strong of an association or a feeling when we're similar or the same. It usually jumps in to prove how different we are. Or I don't know. I kind of made that up, but
definitely becomes more apparent. Yeah, when it's something that like I feel like I don't have. Even in some cases I might, but maybe I don't see it in myself, or perhaps it's something so innate that I don't have a lot of awareness around.
Well, and maybe we've gotten a little off into, I started being a little bit too coachy, because really this is more about your experience with it. So, you said that it's created kind of this holding back, right? What would you say you're learning about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
Well, I have certainly learned that this thing is deep, this comparison thing, and like fear of how people will perceive me. And it seeps through quietly, but it's also like really strong. And like I mentioned earlier, it feels very true to me. So it's hard I really didn't have awareness around how debilitating it was. Debilitating might be a strong. Well, I mean, if it's blocking me from taking movement, that is kind of debilitating. How debilitating it was until coaching came into my life. I'm aware of my critical voice, and I recognize that it's harsh, and it's mean when I am aware of it. Right. Otherwise, it just feels like I still don't always hear it because it feels so much like the truth. And stubbornly, I say that it's ingrained in me. And by even saying that, I feel like that's almost putting an excuse to, well, it's just always going to be there. Like I can't get past it. It's part of me. And I also recognize how much I have And I continue to rely on external validation to motivate me and drive me. So that's something that I've learned.
What have you learned about that specifically?
Like I think back to maybe the last 5 to 7 years, I would always say like I love feedback. Provide me feedback. I love it. I want it. And what I've come to realize is I love the more positive feedback. When you have something more constructive to say, like push off. But I really love like acknowledgement I've identified that as a value,
Yeah.
one of my values, because I recognize how much external validation is. Like if somebody, I will tend to ask other people's opinions of things that I have planned to do. And if they say, "Oh, that's great. That's awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to do this." And if it's not like that, I will second guess like what my original plan towards that thing would be, which is interesting because as I was saying that, I realized like not everyone is great at, I don't want to say great, but feedback is an art, providing feedback, right? And I think some people shy away from providing feedback because feedback is just information gathering, right? Paul, you and I know that. But there does seem to be, as humans, there seems to be like more of that positive feedback. And then there's that constructive, maybe more critical feedback. It feels like either good or bad or however you want to identify it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not everybody is as comfortable with providing that critical or constructive feedback to others. And so I think, I don't know, just as I was saying, the external validation and getting feedback, like if somebody, I feel like most of the responses that I would get were, "Oh, good, that's great, that's awesome."
Well, what it sounds like you're saying is there's this need for external validation. I love feedback. I really love it when people give me positive feedback. And I really want people to give me constructive feedback. And yet I'll still second guess and question the feedback that I get.
Oh yeah. Like when I get feedback that's more constructive, I will second guess. I will overanalyze that to the high hills. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Self-doubt pops in.
Well, it's
like,
you call it crazy. I call it common, right? But what's interesting is like, what do you think it does for you? Because let's back up for a second. So this is not an easy comma for you. Is that a safe,
yes.
Assertion here? And a lot, I throw around the words all the time, like, "Oh, well, it doesn't sound like you've got this figured out," right? Well, not everything in life has to be figured out, but this in particular, like, this isn't something you've got all kind of analyzed and outlined and like, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses, here's my next steps. Like, this is still a very cloudy subject for you. Is that a fair?
It is. There's a lot of stuff bubbling. There's a lot of stuff floating in. So there's been a lot of like looking around, and in terms of figuring it out, yes, it is very much kind of like a jumbled thing up there.
And what I was inclined to do was acknowledge that even in the absence of air quotes, figuring it out, you have still used that information to take different actions in your life. Like, let's talk about that. Let's have you share some of that for a moment, because even sitting here today saying, okay, this comparison thing is still a little cloudy and muddled, it's not clear. There have been examples of what I believe you harnessing the knowledge that you do have and saying, okay, how can I use it to move me forward? What would be some examples you would share?
Well, preparing to share this with your audience allowed me a reason or space to kind of put a lot of the things that I've learned together down in one place, through like just in having a supportive group around me to be able to like point out the things that I have done, getting some of that external validation, but also getting more comfortable with practicing the internal validation and like acknowledging myself. Acknowledgement is such an important thing, and it's a practice thing for me that I'm putting into place, and it helps. And it's also, there's definitely room for me to make it more of a priority. Yeah, I have, I stepped into a role at work that was like, looking back on it, I could say that there's some imposter syndrome where like it was a stretch. And I've done some scary things with building my business and putting myself out there for sure. So like I am doing things, and this is work. This is not something, this has been such a long thing for me that this is not going to go away overnight. If it needs to go away at all, but like, it's not going to disappear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you called attention to them, right? And obviously, because I know you, you changed jobs, you changed companies, you went through an extensive training program, you started a coaching practice. Within your coaching practice, you've started working with clients, you stepped into social media, you've been doing different things with your social media. Like,
yeah,
these are all to be acknowledged, especially in the presence of this truth you've shared with everybody who's listening today.
Well, thank you, Paul. I mean, even as you like career is such a passionate thing for me. And even as you're saying, like, yeah, I did change jobs. And over the last 10 years, I've changed jobs a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten a lot of experience with salary negotiating, my worth in terms of, monetary means, and have really like done had great interviews. And now I'm able to coach and kind of share that knowledge with other people. So I have, thank you. I would like to acknowledge myself for doing things that have been scary.
I would also like to acknowledge you because, and there's a reason I want to do this, in addition to lifting you up, but also reinforce something for me and for anybody who's listening is, this podcast isn't about making people feel better. It's you take what you get from the podcast and what resonates with you. You said you've been working with this, inner voice for a very long time, if not your whole life. And you've done all of these things. And this isn't a podcast where it's like, Emily got her shit together. She's got it all buttoned up. And now she's going to tell you how do you live your life. Like, look at all of the things that you did and did anyway, while also doing the laundry, so to speak. Right. Like, that's what I think is such a powerful story here is that, yes, you sitting on a comma, and yes, still taking care of things that are important to you and moving things forward.
Yeah.
That's what I see as powerful here.
Yeah.
Because we could sit here and I could go into coach mode and say, let's dig in. Let's see if we can get to the root of this comparison thing, Emily. And let's see, how do you define success? Right?
I see you moving in your coach stance.
we could do all that, but that's not the point here. The point is like, this is what you've been experiencing, and this is, what it created, and this is what you've learned about yourself as a result of it.
It's interesting as you were saying that, thinking back to what I said at the very beginning with like, oh, I'm on the comma and I'm kind of dipping my toe out and like feeling the breeze or whatever. I'm probably more than that because it is not completely holding me back. Like there is movement.
Oh, for sure. As you've described. What else would you say? Because you kind of stepped right into the fourth question. Like, what would you say has changed for you as a result of this experience?
I mean, I'm learning to find my positive voice.
What do you mean by that?
I think in just recognizing that, like I'm getting more comfortable and practicing using it and expressing my opinion and my thoughts on something, because like in conversation, maybe people were talking about climate change, whatever it might be, politics or something. I would not necessarily, I may have an opinion, but I wouldn't insert myself because I would, this voice of like perceiving the other party or witnesses as smarter than me and not wanting to say something that would make me look like an idiot. And that's held me back from. So in many cases, I'm not comfortable expressing my opinion, saying something because of that fear of like, again, how people will hear me. So and when it comes to like building my business, I'm laughing because I'm like, I've gotten great external validation from people, but I recognize like I hear from people that what you said really resonated with me, or, oh my gosh, this stuck out, or I really needed to hear this today. And, through that, hearing some of that, I recognize that not everyone may feel comfortable coming to me and like expressing that, but just recognizing that something I say may make a difference in someone's life or like brighten someone's day or make them laugh if I provide some wisdom or whatever. And that helps me, not in many cases, not 100% yet, but like, it helps me moving past that fear of what if.
Definitely this trusting that there will be positive outcomes from your actions and the things that you share and say is what I think I just heard you say.
For other people and
yeah.
connecting. It connects me to other people, whether I know that or not.
And connection is one of the things that you said was most important to you.
Yeah.
Or is very important to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What else has changed?
I'm also, fortunate to have a wonderful coaching community around me. And so I've been getting coached around this topic. I won't say every week, but like it definitely comes up on a consistent basis throughout the last year and a half. So I have help, right? And like I'm also helping myself in working on or hearing the voice quicker. It's not going to again, like it feels very ingrained and it's there. But one of the things that came up recently was if I hear that voice saying, "Oh, you're not doing enough," or "You didn't do anything," or "You're not doing it fast enough," whatever it might be, like then when I hear that, jotting down on my notes somewhere, like something to disprove whatever negative thing it's pointing out. Because if I'm having a conversation with someone and I say like, "Oh, I haven't done anything to build my business." And if you know that I have, you can point that out. Like if I'm saying that to myself internally, it feels harder to have that like disprovement conversation internally. So writing it down on paper is more helpful for me.
Well, and you said multiple times, this voice feels like the truth. So that has to, let's just acknowledge, that sounds like it has to make it very difficult to even catch the voice in the first place.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's something that could be really useful for somebody else who's dealing with the same challenge. What have you been able to say, this is how I know it's the wrong voice, or it's the bad voice, or whatever word you want to use for it? Like, what's the thing? How do you catch it?
Honestly, it really started with having somebody to point it out.
Okay.
Having somebody to point it out, whether it's an accountability partner or a coach or a therapist, whatever, or a partner, somebody to point it out and like do that quick disprovement. What you just said makes no sense.
Okay. So I was going to say, let's clarify. How did somebody else point it out? Because you said it.
Yeah. Hearing me say it and they're like, "What are you talking about? I know that you just did that thing.
Yeah.
Why are you talking to yourself like that?" And then that like sparked the kind of looking deeper into, oh, wow, this thing is incessant.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of noticing and observation and inviting other people to give you that kind of feedback. Like, watch the words that I say, because they're not always my words.
It was the feedback thing, what you just said. Like, I think, something that we went through in TCE was asking people for, how do you see me? Right? Like, what's some feedback? Can you share some feedback with me? And that also, like, because for so long, and I still go through this too. If somebody says something nice to me, I have a very hard time believing it unless it really feels true to me. And because of this inner critic voice, a lot of the things don't necessarily feel true, because in my mind, it's like, oh no, no. Well, you're not as good as somebody else, or like, oh no, somebody else did it better, right? Like there's all this.
Well,
fighting.
What you've basically been telling us is that it doesn't feel true unless it's negative or critical.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have I been saying that? I think I kind of have.
Well, it's a challenging question. Yeah, but now you're telling us that no, there is a barometer in here that allows me to see positive feedback as true as well.
There is, but it's harder. It's a yeah. Thank you for reflecting that, because the barometer, if you will, is like way higher or steeper.
The critical feedback is easier and feels more like the truth. And when somebody gives me positive feedback, I spend more energy trying to evaluate whether it's true, because it's not as easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems like a really powerful learning. Like just knowing that about yourself. What does that do for you? Just knowing that about yourself.
Well, the way you phrased it was that you put it very succinctly. So I appreciate that. I think I've had awareness, or I have had awareness around that, because that's come up in previous noticing, but it's been a while. So I think that's what kind of like sparked my, oh yeah, that is true. That is right. I think there's still some practices for me to explore that more. Something I think that you and I talked about maybe last year was, if I find myself maybe jealous of somebody, or like this comparison of other people, is to, what is the thing that I see in them that like I want or that I'd like. And then maybe finding ways to prove that like, oh, I already do that perhaps, or like, here's the way that I do exemplify that.
If I recall, and it's certainly not my creation because I heard it from someone else and somebody else said it to me, is you couldn't see it in them if it didn't exist in yourself.
Woo.
So if you're seeing it in them, where do you find it in yourself? And then you have to do that, right? and yes, I did say have to.
Yeah, that's so good. I feel like that should be the tagline of the there's value there. There's value there for sure. You can't identify it unless you've, seen it or it's somewhere within you.
That's
powerful stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, all the, narcissism like is big in conversation today. And it's like, how do you know you're not a narcissist? The fact that you ask yourself the question.
Yeah, I see it. Yep, totally.
Like if you're a narcissist, you wouldn't ask the question. So if you're comparing, I'm totally self-referencing here, but it's like, if I'm comparing myself to someone else and I see them as better than me or more successful or more accomplished than me, I wouldn't be able to see it if I couldn't see that in me as well.
Yeah, that's really valuable.
What then, I'm going to ask you this question before we go to the last one and start to wrap up. If you think about all of the people that you compare yourself to, what are the things that come up the most that you see in other people that you believe they have?
Oy vey.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to.
Do you want to participate? Do you want to go with it?
Well, like professional communication comes up, being able to succinctly like express themselves in a way that, succinctly express themselves. Confidence, boldness. Yeah, I've always like admired people who are so bold and because that seems to emulate like brave and confidence. And I've always been drawn to people like that. And I think that there's a part of me that wants to be that way, but it feels damn scary again, right? Like the what ifs, what will people think of me if I do put myself out in that way? And so I do anyway. So like bold and confident.
You said communication, confidence, and boldness. So let's just go with those three.
All right.
Where do you already see those in yourself? Don't worry about them being perfect or right or anything like that. Just give me an example.
Which three did we go with?
Communication, confidence, and boldness.
So, well, the bold, probably the hardest one. Okay. Start with bold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you bold?
I am reaching out to people who I never would have reached out to in terms of like building my business, putting myself out there. I'm being bold and being myself incredibly, Emily. Communication. I communicate in the way that is authentic to me, and I communicate in a way that really connects with people.
It also seems that given the different types of hats that you wear on a daily basis professionally, it's not just you communicating authentically and in your way, but you have the ability to flex your communication based on the needs of your environment and your audience.
Thank you for that. That's you saying that is something that like I want to believe, but my rebuttal to that is like that feels like a stretch for me, and sometimes that's something I struggle with, and that doesn't feel super authentic to me. But I do have the ability to flex, whether like what I'm flexing to is perfection or not, right?
Yeah,
I can still flex. Yeah.
Because I mean, the fact is you do that. I mean, whether you believe it or not, like you do that. When you show up to your day job as an HR professional, you're communicating in certain ways. When you're coaching with clients, you're communicating in other ways. And when you're doing your live on Instagram, which I just watched, before we recorded not too long ago, you're showing up in a different way as well. And there's a consistent theme throughout.
It's me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hit confidence. I love this, by the way.
Yeah, this is fun. Thank you. Confidence. Maybe this is the hard one. I mean, as I think about the name of my coaching business, Incredibly Emily, I am incredible in my own way. And, I want more confidence around that, and I'm working towards it. I am confident in how I show up for people. Like sorry, I hit my microphone, like creating a safe space and, going back to this connection piece, like I really do know that is a strength of mine, and I am confident in my ability to connect with people and like get to know them on a level where they feel comfortable.
Would it be a safe assertion to say that when you are connecting or experiencing deep connection, that you're not comparing? That kind of goes away.
When I'm really in it, yeah.
I so would love to dig in more on that. And I don't think I've done this on an episode yet, but I'm like, oh, sorry, we're done with that. We've got to ask the next question. But I do like, I would like to leave you with that. Like, maybe spend some time on that. Maybe you and I can have another conversation, not on the microphone here, and explore that a little bit more. But I want to acknowledge you for what you just did, though, because, we were talking about what's changed for you as a result of this experience and sitting on this comma, and you were sharing, some of the things that you were doing and, taking the steps anyway, and still moving forward to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. And then, we kind of went a little bit sideways in terms of, well, what are some of the things that you do see in other people that you compare yourself to? And you said communication, confidence, and boldness. Mm-hmm. And when I challenged you, you identified those traits in yourself.
Yeah.
Without a whole lot of work. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
I don't have it all figured out, and I'm not exactly sure because I'm still kind of dipping my toe into the unknown. But I think the things that I am doing currently, I'm getting coached. I work with a coach. It can be so helpful to have a supportive person serving as a mirror and reflecting back some of the words in a way that opens up like a new line of sight, right? Like that's one of the powers of coaching. And somebody who knows what I'm doing from an accountability standpoint, and can point out like that harsh inner critic, like the things that I am doing, even though I say that I'm not doing anything. So working with a coach, and through coaching, then also building my business, I'm taking steps that feel scary and like going in directions that feel scary. So I'm making moves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making moves and like getting into the uncomfortable, and finding out that I can do things, right? That feels so scary and like, oh, I can't do that. But then I do it. That's, building that confidence slowly but surely.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's really powerful. And like what I hear you say is like, I'm going to have scary one way or another. So why don't I choose the scary, and the scary that's going to actually help me achieve and accomplish,
like get what I want.
Yeah. Rather than hold me back.
And then, putting myself out there on social media and initiating connections that I would otherwise shy away from. And that's great practice in sharing my voice, that positive voice, my thoughts, my opinions, and wisdom.
Yeah.
If I may be so bold.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. What made you say wisdom?
Because I am smart and I have things to share. Even if it's not smartness, I still have experiences that I can share, my learnings with other people that might serve them. And I know that because I have done that.
I acknowledge you for acknowledging yourself. That's awesome. And I'm just going to leave it at that. There's nothing else I'm going to add to that would add value to what you've already shared. So, Emily, what else? I think you've already acknowledged yourself. That's always my next question after question 5 is, what would you acknowledge yourself for today? But let me ask you, what would you acknowledge yourself for today?
For coming with a topic that is vulnerable for me. Not crying. I got close.
Tears are welcome here, by the way.
Also, once I start, I have a hard time stopping. And then also, like, I knew that I guess I don't know, but my strong hope is that something that I think that this is something that a lot of people probably experience. I don't know if that's comparison, but
but in a different way, right? You're going about it differently.
just sharing my experience so that, maybe something changes for other people, or we can work on this together.
Oh, I love that invitation too. And I'll acknowledge you as well, because, a lot of times when people listen to podcasts, they're expecting kind of the easy 1, 2, 3, or here's the 5 steps, or here's my model and my recipe and technique. And even some of the guests that I've had, I've had, pretty what feels like buttoned up stories. And that's never the case. Like, every story is unique. Every story is individual.
Yeah.
And I do acknowledge your vulnerability, and you're bringing this to us because like this is life, right? This is the thing. You're working through the thing. You're doing the laundry. Sometimes you got to do it multiple times. And meanwhile, I'm also taking care of these other things and getting these insights out of it. And the journey continues, right, to unfold. So thank you.
Thank you,
for bringing
Paul.
that.
And thank you for opening up a space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've already gotten a couple of things here that I've written down for myself as well. So Emily, tell us, where can people find you if they want to connect with you, or just do a little kind of like cyber stalking and find you?
Oh, cyber stalking. I love it. So you can find my website. My coaching website is incrediblyemily.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle is incrediblyemily_coaching. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Emily Bennington. Would love to connect with you.
Awesome. In addition to where people can find you, Emily, is there anyone else? We always extend the invitation for you to lift up or give support to other organizations, individuals, or causes that are important to you, because that's an important part of your story as well. Who else would you acknowledge?
I love that you do this, Paul. I have 3. So my first is Planned Parenthood. At my core, I believe that everyone has the right to affordable reproductive health services. So Planned Parenthood, your local chapter. Then also, as an animal lover and a dog mom, there's Labradors and More. So I live in the San Diego area. Labradors and More, or Labs and More, and then also Animal Pad. There are 2 local SoCal animal shelters. Labs and More, I support through volunteering and donations. And that's where my husband and I actually adopted our 7-year-old puppy and love of our life, Callie, several years ago. And then the Animal Pad just recently rescued over 400 dogs in a really terrible, horrific situation in Mexico. And so they're doing really amazing and selfless work to provide those dogs with the love that they need and deserve. So just wherever you are, support your local shelter because they need help, and adopt, don't shop.
Nice. Yes. Emily, thank you. As always, great to be here with you. It's great to be able to capture your story as well and put it out there for others to hear. And I'm looking forward to us continuing the conversation. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Paul.
What an honor it is to witness these stories from these amazing human beings, and today's guest was no exception. I invite you to think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. I can't tell you how magical it can be to set aside your expectations and just let your thoughts flow out of your head and onto paper. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to do anything with it, but you can be amazed at what comes out of your thoughts and onto paper and what that can do for you. I know freestyle journaling has been a powerful practice in my life for a very long time. You just never know what you might discover about yourself. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. Follow me on social media at Off the Comma, and also look for upcoming workshops and events at offthecomma.com, or better yet, go to offthecomma.com and sign up for my mailing list and let me bring the news directly to you. I am passionate about keeping this podcast ad-free so that we create a safe container for people to be able to tell their stories uninterrupted by commercials and promotions. I currently cover all the production costs, and I'm happy to continue doing so. And I'm also open to and appreciative of any donations that anyone would like to contribute. This is nothing more than to be able to support the podcast and cover some of the monthly editing and producing and equipment costs that are associated with this podcast. So look for the donations link in the podcast descriptions wherever you find this podcast. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast, and more importantly, spread the good word. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. As always, keep noticing.